everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk Physical Media. I am your host, John, and this is the weekly physical media show where we talk all things in the world of physical media, and we also talk about everything in the world of film and movies, and all things that we love. And we like to start the show off every single week with the news. So this week we actually got two huge announcements, and I'm not going to bury the lead and start off with The Hitcher coming from Second Sight on September 30th. I know plenty of people who have been anticipating this, including our channel producer, John Doe Juggalo. He's been waiting for this for years. I remember that this got announced like a couple of years ago that it was being worked on. They actually took us through the entire process of them working on this. A lot of us were expecting this, I think, at the end of last year. So to finally be getting it on September 30th in a beautiful collector's edition, that is fantastic. And yeah, the artwork is awesome. I think I still kind of prefer the original artwork, but I do like what they're going for here with this artwork. And Second Sight is not a US-based company. For a lot of people who don't know that, you'll actually have to import this 4K Blu-ray disc to the United States if you want to get it. I believe you can buy it right from Second Sight, or you can use great websites like the Atomic Movie Store or Diabolic DVD, and I'm pretty sure Orbit DVD. They'll import it to you as well. It would definitely cost a little bit more because you don't actually live in the region where it's shipping from. But you know what? It's still worth it. The Hitcher coming to 4K Blu-ray is a big deal. And you know, if that price point for the collector's edition is a little high, there is a standard 4K Blu-ray release that's, I believe, $28 US, and that's actually what I'll be buying. I bought actually a couple of those. I have It Follows here on 4K Blu-ray, and I have High Tension here on 4K Blu-ray. I bought these, the standard editions. You know, it's pretty plain Jane. You don't got the slipcover or anything on it. You just get the disc on the inside. But as long as that disc works well, and it absolutely does work well, then it's no issue at all. I'm just really glad to have these on 4K Blu-ray. Both High Tension and It Follows are high quality. Second Sight is just known for their high quality. So I know so many people are looking forward to The Hitcher coming to 4K Blu-ray on September 30th, and I can't wait for it myself. Haven't seen that movie in years. It's not one of my favorites of the 1980s, but it could end up rising up my list because I haven't seen it in years, and I might enjoy it this time around, and a beautiful 4K Blu-ray might just do the trick. And then another big announcement we got this week was Godzilla Minus One is going to be coming to 4K Blu-ray also in September. And from what I understand, this is the same as the Japanese release, but we'll actually have, you know, English subtitles for it. Only the first disc is going to be a 4K Blu-ray for the theatrical release, and then you'll have the second disc be a Blu-ray. The third disc will be Godzilla Minus One minus color, and that will be on Blu-ray as well, which I thought was a little bit disappointing. And the final disc, which is all Japanese extras, which is a really beautiful set, by the way. I love the artwork on it. A lot of us have been waiting for Godzilla Minus One to finally come to 4K Blu-ray, and I actually was going to wait for this to come to 4K Blu-ray because I missed Godzilla Minus One during its like initial run, but then they actually re-released it back in theaters, I believe early January, and I was able to actually check it out, and I loved it. Godzilla Minus One is actually my favorite Godzilla movie of all time, and you know, that's not really saying too much. I'm not the world's biggest Godzilla fan. I wish I was. I gotta go back and watch the whole series over again, but I was never somebody who like clung to the franchise. Unfortunately, the first Godzilla movie I ever saw was Godzilla 98, and because of that, I do still have a soft spot for Godzilla 98, despite the fact it's not a very good movie, but it is somewhat entertaining, I gotta admit. I was entertained by it in 1998. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I was 6 years old. It is what it is. So anyway, you know, I'm not the biggest Godzilla fan. I have kept up with the films, but I really felt like Godzilla Minus One was the perfect balance and really shows me the real issue with the legendary Godzilla movies that we get released here in the United States, which are just, you know what, mindless action films that look and sound beautiful, don't get me wrong, but Godzilla Minus One, that movie is a movie. That's a film. You know what? We actually care about the human characters, which is something plenty of these monster movies just don't know what the hell they're doing with. The human characters are just emotionless in pretty much all these movies, but not in Godzilla Minus One. In Godzilla Minus One, the human characters are moving this story along. It's honestly the perfect companion to Oppenheimer. You know, using the nuclear war, the atomic bomb that's being built in Oppenheimer, actually using it as a backdrop for Godzilla Minus One. It's just perfect, coming out in the same year, and we're finally getting that 4K Blu-ray also in September, and I can't wait for that. That'll be a day one purchase as well. I don't think there was an official press release about this yet, but I believe you can already pre-order it, so that was pretty cool as well. And then one thing, we're getting the 4K Steelbook for it, and I was wondering why they only announced the 4K Steelbook when, you know, there's part 2 coming around the corner. I'm talking about Kevin Costner's Horizon. This is an American saga. It's supposed to be 4 parts. Part 1 just came out, and it bombed at the box office, unfortunately. a lot of us saw this coming, and unfortunately I contributed to that. As much as I preach going to the movies, I wasn't able to check out Horizon yet. It's just not enough time in the day, and unfortunately that was one I just couldn't get there to see. I'm hoping to go to the movies this weekend and actually check out Longlegs, because I heard that movie is great. Not as good as it was hyped up to be, as like one of the scariest movies ever, but I still heard it's pretty damn good, so I did want to go check it out. But I don't know if you guys can hear it in my voice. I caught like one of those summer colds, so I've just kind of felt like crap all week, and I don't want to go to the movies and get anyone else sick, because it actually sounds like Longlegs is doing pretty well in theaters, so that's pretty cool. I always like to see a small movie do pretty damn well. The horror fans always come out. That's why horror fans are the best, because they always come out for their movies no matter what it is. They got to see it for themselves. That's why audience scores and critic scores are always so divided when it comes to horror. Horror and comedy, I feel like, are the two genres that are the most subjective. I feel like, you know, everybody has different things that they find scary, and everybody has different things that they find funny. That's why it's very subjective when it comes to horror. And horror just can go all over the place. There's so many different subgenres of horror as well. So all the horror fans always show up, and I'm really glad it sounds like people are showing up for Longlegs. I'm hoping I get better by this weekend so I can actually fully check it out. But if not, I'll check it out maybe next week. I'll go one night, even though Twisters is coming out next week as well, and I'll be checking that out. I cannot wait for Twisters. But the thing is with Horizon now, Horizon didn't do well at the box office. Horizon Part 2 was already announced to be coming out in August, so, you know, we had like a 6 or 7 week gap there between Horizon Part 1 and Horizon Part 2. The hope was that Horizon would do well enough in theaters, build anticipation for Part 2, and then, you know what, those two movies would be successful. Warner Brothers would then greenlight Parts 3 and Part 4. But unfortunately, they already pulled Part 2 from the schedule, and that's probably going to be it, barring some miracle, which might actually be the 4K Blu-ray sales. Maybe if people buy the 4K Steelbook and they're like, hey, this movie's great, I'm sorry I didn't go and see it in theaters, can you put Part 2 back in theaters? Because if Warner Brothers feels like this movie's not going to make any money, we know David Zaslav, it's all about the money. It's not just going to be released unless he feels like it's actually going to make them some money. Now, I assume because Kevin Costner actually spent $38 million of his own money, and I believe even more than that, like, you know, mortgaging some of his property from what I understand. So he's invested everything in the Horizon. That I assume he'll find a way.
Life, finds a way.
Like Francis Ford Coppola did with his latest movie, he'll find a way to get at least Horizon Part 2 done, because I believe Part 2 is already, you know, completely finished, because it has to be. It was coming out on August 16th. But, you know, I heard that they're already shooting Part 3, so I'm sure that Kevin Costner and everybody else will figure out a way for it to get distributed, whether it be just on 4K Blu-ray, streaming on Max. I don't know exactly what the plan is. I am a little bit disappointed that Horizon Part 2 will not be released in theaters. And like I said, I'd be a hypocrite, so I can't say that I went and saw Horizon Part 1 in theaters. I really should have. I wish I did, but unfortunately, I just wasn't able to, couldn't find the time, and that's one I missed in theaters. And, you know, I kind of contributed to the fact that Horizon Part 2 will not be coming out in theaters this August. So that was pretty disappointing. And, you know, speaking of, like, Warner Brothers, shifting over to another big classic movie studio, Paramount is going to be merging with Skydance. Now, Skydance and Paramount, they're no strangers to each other. They've been in bed together before. You know, you've probably seen the Skydance logo in front of most of the recent Mission Impossible movies, so this isn't a very big surprise. Now, what was surprising is I remember reading an article about 2 weeks ago that said Skydance was completely out of it. There's just no way that they are going to be able to get a deal done. The deal's completely off the table, and then the next thing I hear is that they merge. And, you know, because it's a merger, I don't really have the complete specifics. Paramount will get like an influx of about $8 billion, which they desperately needed, and of course now Skydance will become the parent company, or, you know, like, I guess they're merging with the parent company of Paramount. I don't know. That's one thing I don't like about mergers and other big companies buying other big companies, is that now there's just so many small companies under one big corporation, and that just raises a lot of problems with the planet as a whole in general, is that the whole fucking planet is just run by corporations. I mean, they were talking about this since Network in the 1970s, but it's true. It's run by corporations, and to see more corporations merging, and now, you know, there's more money, people will probably lose their jobs in this, and that's the thing I always hate most. I hate seeing people lose their jobs, you know, and I get it. Like, it's a real catch-22, because I don't like to see these big companies getting bigger, but I also don't want to see them go out of business. So I was always wondering if there was a way for this to work where Paramount could just get an infusion of cash and not actually have to merge with another company. Because, the last time this happened with big studios, with Fox and Disney, now, this is nothing like Fox and Disney merging, but when Disney bought Fox all those years ago, my biggest fears really came true, and that's, especially with us, with this being a physical media channel, the amount of Fox movies that we haven't gotten on 4K Blu-ray because Disney just doesn't care about physical media, you always worry about these things and who ends up getting hurt in these deals. It sounds great at the beginning because now a company that might have gone out of business is saved. Nobody wanted to see Paramount go out of business. Paramount, Viacom, all that stuff. Paramount Plus, despite the fact that I think it's one of the weakest streaming services, I want to keep Paramount around. I knock their 4K Blu-rays night and day anytime they want to reuse the same audio over and over or put out a lazy 4K Blu-ray, but I don't want to see Paramount disappear, and I don't want to see people lose their jobs. So my fingers are crossed that this is a good thing and not a bad thing. So we'll see how this all works out. But that's really it as far as in the world of news. It was actually, I guess, a kind of busy week in the world of physical media, but it's really just those two announcements. None of the major boutique labels announced their upcoming releases. We're probably still a few weeks away before we start getting our spooky season's announcements for like Shout and Scream Factory. That I can't wait for. So all that stuff's going to be coming pretty damn soon. So this week, Godzilla Minus One and the Hitcher coming to 4K Blu-ray. Yeah, that's a pretty big deal, and we're looking forward to that here, aren't we? So, without further ado, let's dive into the Q&A portion of this week's show. So, the first question is from Mr. Smelly Potato, and he actually asked me a question that we're going to hold off to next week, and I'm going to read you the whole thread so you guys get a full understanding of what I'm talking about here. So, he said, rank these 2024 movies, if you've seen them: Night Swim, Immaculate, Imaginary, The First Omen, Abigail, Sting, Tarot, Strangers Chapter 1, The Watchers, The Exorcism, and Maxine. Now, I haven't seen all of these, and I would like to at least see most of them by next week. So what I'm going to do is hold off a week, try and catch up on all of these movies. That way I can actually give you guys a full ranking of all 10 of these movies, because I have seen a bunch of these, but I haven't seen them all. The one that might be the hardest to see is probably Strangers Chapter 1 or The Exorcism. I'm not too sure if they're streaming yet or how much they cost to rent, but if I can, I'm going to check out the ones I haven't seen. I'll give you guys a full ranking next week of these movies. But because of that, I said, hey, I'm going to do this next week. You got another question for this week. Well, Mr. Smelly Potato said, what are your top 5 Disney Pixar movies? So I decided, it's been a while since I actually ranked my top 5 favorite Pixar movies. I did a video here in the very early days of the channel, like maybe within like 6 months, whenever Turning Red was coming out. I reviewed Turning Red, or I was anticipating reviewing Turning Red, and I actually ranked my favorite Pixar movies. So it's been a while since I've actually done this. So I don't remember actually what I put on that list. I might have even done this on one of these videos a long time ago too. I'm not 100% sure. So at number 5, I got 2007's Ratatouille, and this movie is fantastic, directed by Brad Bird, his follow-up to The Incredibles, and this movie's about a rat who just dreams of cooking, played by Patton Oswalt in this movie, and of course, it builds up to this great conclusion where the guy working at the restaurant, he's a fraud, obviously, because the rat's the one actually doing the cooking, pulling his hair. Great animation in this movie, by the way. Italy never looked so beautiful, other than probably in live action, but animated Italy from Pixar in 2007 looks great. Of course, again, we're building up to a food critic. The food critic, of course, he's a dick, even though he might not actually be a dick, but everyone hates a critic, right? So they serve him his food, and he gets sucked back into like his childhood and why he became a food critic to begin with. And the message of this movie is great. And of course, if you're somebody who loves food, and if you guys look at me, you know that I love food. Of course, I love this movie, and every time I watch it, I want to actually eat something. I actually haven't watched this movie since my honeymoon, and I watched it just in the room, like, streaming. That was the last time I watched it. I have to really upgrade this one to 4K Blu-ray, but, you get a little worried about upgrading the 4K with Disney because they always half-ass it. Speaking of which, at number 4, I got the original Inside Out. You guys have heard me talk about this movie, and I also just love this one, especially dealing with the emotions. Inside Out 2 is a good follow-up to this, but the original is still the best. I always feel that way. It's very rare that I feel like a sequel is as good as the original. You can only do the original once. Obviously adding more emotions. Good message, but with Inside Out, the original one, seeing the original joy and anger, All that stuff for the first time was great. The animation, just like any Pixar movie, they always get better and better. This also features a great Chinatown joke. You guys have heard me talk about that a million times in here. I loved it. It also had a great short with a bunch of volcanoes before this movie. I haven't seen it since, and I can't really remember what the name was, but it was one of my favorite Pixar shorts ever. You know, got you a little bit emotional before the movie even started. So Inside Out is just a great movie. Actually, that might have been for Finding Dory. I'm not 100% sure on that, but either way, if anyone remembers that volcano short, can you leave that in the comment section below? I would love to check that one out again. At number 3, I got The Incredibles. This is the first Brad Bird film, so this should really tell you something about Brad Bird. What a great director. 2004 is The Incredibles, the best Fantastic Four movie there ever was. And this movie just features so many great characters, including Samuel L. Jackson. You know, superheroes living in a regular world, then unfortunately, the real people living in this world, they start suing the superheroes, and they start to become a liability, and superheroes just have to not be superheroes anymore. They have to, like, blend into the real world. This drives Mr. Incredible nuts to the point that he's sneak superheroing with Samuel L. Jackson's character. He ends up on a evil villain's island, played by Jason Lee, and a great voice performance, by the way. I mean, the voice acting in general is great in this movie, but this movie just flies by. The animation's a little bit dated. It's pretty early Pixar, but still, it is the better of the two Incredibles movies. I really enjoyed The Incredibles 2. I thought it was a worthy follow. Obviously, it's going to live in the shadows of the original Incredibles, but still, I love the original Incredibles. I just rewatched this again a few weeks ago, and man, it just brought a smile to my face. If you haven't seen The Incredibles in a while, definitely check it out. This 4K Blu-ray is pretty good. At number 2, this is going to be cheating, and I know I did this the last time I did this, and I'm going to always do it. I'm going to have to put it number 2. The Toy Story trilogy. You'll notice that Toy Story 4 isn't in there. And Toy Story 4 is fine, but I didn't need it. I really think that they ended it perfectly in 2010. And, you know, you guys have probably heard me talk about my age here in the past. I was born in 1992. You know, the first Toy Story came out in 1995. I saw it in 1999 when Toy Story 2 came out. I saw it in theaters over Thanksgiving. You know, that was a big deal in my childhood, was my parents were divorced. So because they were divorced, I saw my dad the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I slept over. We would watch the Macy's Day Parade on Thanksgiving morning, and then he would bring me back to me and my brother back to my mom's house. That's always what we did. So every Thanksgiving it was a tradition that Wednesday before we would go to the movies. Usually we'd see a Christmas movie, but this year we happened to see Toy Story 2 coming out. You know, me and my brother both love the original Toy Story, so we went and saw Toy Story 2. I love that movie. Okay, follow up. 2010, Toy Story 3 is coming out. I graduate high school in 2010, so Andy's graduating high school. He's going to college in 2010. If I would have gone to college, you know what? That would have been the year me going to college. And, you know, you have to let those childhood things go. It happens to be his toys. And Toy Story 3, you know, if you didn't cry in the theater, you're lying. Or, you know what? You have some problems. Because, yeah, I mean, I was a little bit more emotional back in 2010, but it felt like my childhood was ending too. So it was very emotional. So I wanted the Toy Story trilogy to end right there. It was a perfect trilogy, but of course, money talks, and that's why we got Toy Story 4. And I like the Forky character. Again, it's fine. The animation's gorgeous in that movie, but it doesn't live up to the original Toy Story films. And honestly, you wouldn't think anything could follow that up, and I never thought anything would ever reach those heights. Usually I don't let anything pass things that I'm very nostalgic for, but then a little movie came out called Coco, and I went and saw this in the theaters by myself because my wife Faith wouldn't go with me. She's like, oh, it's just a kid's movie. That's always what some people do with animations. It's a kid's movie. It's because it's animated. It must be a kid's movie, right? Well, Coco, I'm in the theater, and I'm probably crying more than all the kids. So what does that tell you? It should tell you that this is a fantastic movie. I love Coco. Every time you hear the song Remember Me, it's in a different context until the final time you hear it, and it just breaks you down. This orange bridge looks absolutely stunning. I think this is actually one of the better Pixar animated films, and definitely one of the better Pixar 4K Blu-rays. The music is also fantastic in it, dealing with the Day of the Dead. I just always enjoyed this movie. I've probably seen it now already at least 10 times, which is crazy because it's not even 10 years old yet. but I just really enjoyed this movie. Even after I saw it that first time, I actually dragged Faith back to see it. She now loves that movie, so she probably should have listened to me the first time, so you guys should too. Check out Coco if you haven't seen it. And the next question's from Kevin Kruger, and he said, what are the top 10 movies that take place in one day? Made a list for this bad boy. Great question. I'm actually surprised I haven't done this on the channel because this is a great idea. So starting at number 10, I got Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. This is probably one of the greatest stoner comedies of all time. Really brought a resurgence to White Castle. Some of us never left White Castle behind, but for those who forgot about it, White Castle is fantastic, and this movie is absolutely hysterical. It also rejuvenated Neil Patrick Harris's career. He's great in this movie, and it all takes place in one night. You know what? We got to go get some White Castle, and of course, everything that can go wrong does go wrong, but it's also got all these great side characters that pop up in this movie. It's full of laughs. That's the thing. It's just an absolute stoner comedy. So if you're not into that and you're not into really stupid humor, you probably won't like this movie. And it got 2 sequels. I enjoyed the sequels, but I still think the original Harold and Kumar, if you were there when it first came out, I remember being at the theater and seeing the poster for this movie, and I was just like, how did they get White Castle on the poster? That's pretty damn cool, and we just had to see it because it was White Castle. So number 9, speaking of just a night gone wrong, After Hours. This is the Martin Scorsese 1980s. It was a very underrated classic, but it has experienced quite the resurgence. People are finding After Hours now. Probably a lot of that has to give credit to the Criterion Collection releasing a beautiful 4K Blu-ray. After Hours is a great 4K Blu-ray if you haven't checked that one out. Features a great score. You know, this is a comedy. Cheech and Chong pop up in this movie. You know, Griffin Dunn's character, he goes out one night, he thinks he's gonna get laid, and, you know, his money flies out the window. Like I said, that everything that could go wrong, it just gets so ridiculously out of hand by the end of this movie. You see the parents from Home Alone in this movie. Like, Catherine O'Hara is in this movie as well. So it's fantastic. Martin Scorsese also has a cameo as a light man in this movie. Check out After Hours. It's really funny. Number 8, 12 Angry Men. You know, this is one of Sidney Lumet's masterpieces. It's considered one of the greatest films of all time. It's been remade. It's had numerous remakes that have become Broadway plays. But the original 12 Angry Men, has it ever looked any hotter in a movie? Well, yes, it has. We'll talk about that in a little while. But it looks scorching in this movie. These guys, you know, they just want to get out of there. They think they have an open and shut case, but unfortunately, one of the jurors, yeah, he's not satisfied, and he's got to make sure that all the other jurors are actually doing their job and not half-assing it, and then one by one, they fall until finally they come back with a not guilty verdict. It all takes place in one room, and it's just so compelling. One of the best acted films, just one of the best written films. And again, one thing about Sidney Lumet, he always captures the elements, and I always love how the clothes people are wearing, you know, they don't look fancy. They look like real men in this movie. Number 7, Rope, Alfred Hitchcock's, one of his masterpieces. The guy doesn't just have one, but this movie is very underappreciated. It takes place over the course of one dinner party. It's made to look like one shot. Now, it's very obvious where the cuts are. It's not like modern movies like Birdman where, you know, where are the cuts kind of deal. No. In this movie, the cuts are very obvious, but still, it takes place in one room. Well, I guess 2 rooms, but it really looks like one big stage. You know, the lighting is changing behind it. Great 4K Blu-ray out there, by the way. But the story is just so compelling. And, you know, again, taking place over the course of just one dinner party. These 2 guys, at the beginning of this movie, we just see them kill somebody just to try it. That's all they wanted to do. They just wanted to see what it was like to kill somebody. And they put the body in a chest that is going to be that's going to be in the center of this room during the entire dinner party. And they want to try and get away with it. James Stewart, though, he's starting to get a little bit suspicious of them. And that's what this movie is all about. Is, you know, the paranoia, the suspicion, all of that, and it's all tremendously acted. Rope is fantastic. Number 6, another Sidney Lumet movie. 1975's Dog Day Afternoon, starring Al Pacino and John Cazale. John Cazale, every movie that he ever appeared in was nominated for Best Picture before he died of cancer. It's one of the most tragic stories ever, because he's a fantastic actor. Look at The Deer Hunter. I mean, he's Fredo in The Godfather Part 1 and 2. But he's great in Dog Day Afternoon. Al Pacino, you know, the reason why he's robbing the bank is actually for a good reason. And it just gets way out of hand. Things really, I mean, by the time, you know, he's yelling in the street, things just got way out of hand for him. He lost complete control for what he was trying to do, which at the end of the day was a good thing, but he was doing it, it was coming out in the... but it just wasn't coming across the right way, that's for sure. When you choose to rob a bank, bad things can happen, but Dog Day Afternoon is an absolute classic. And number 5, the original 1994 Clerks. This is the movie that Kevin Smith gambled everything on, and it paid off. 'Cause Kevin Smith's the guy where the dream came true. A regular Joe like you and me working at a convenience store. He films his movie every night. You know, that's why we had to have the door be stuck closed, because that way, you know, we can get past the fact that we're shooting at night, shooting it in black and white, you know, to cover up the ugliness. That's one thing we learned in Clerks 3, and it's cheaper. But the movie itself, all the stuff that they're talking about, especially if you're a movie fan, you know, ooh, Navy SEALs. Like, you know, when that's the first thing that we thought of when Navy SEALs got announced for 4K Blu-ray was the clip in this movie. You know, all the talk about the people working on the Death Star, like all that stuff is fantastic. It started the View Askew universe. You know, guys, I went on the Jay and Silent Bob cruise. That's how much I love the original Clerks movie. It's not my favorite Kevin Smith movie. That's still Dogma, which, you know, I've heard rumors we might be getting on 4K Blu-ray, so better not be fooling. And at number 4, Collateral. This all takes place in one night. Jamie Foxx is a taxi driver, and you know what? Vincent gets in his cab one night, played by Tom Cruise, and definitely his best performance. Not my favorite of his movies, but man, seeing Tom Cruise be the bad guy with that gray hair, gray suit, he could just blend into a crowd because he's a stone cold killer. But man, he's getting under Jamie Foxx's skin. He has to be in complete control, but Jamie Foxx has some good reasoning for wanting to take him down. And this film was done by Michael Mann. I think this is his second best film behind 1995's Heat. It's almost as good as Heat. It takes place in Los Angeles, and again, it takes place all in one night. And you're really there for Tom Cruise's amazing performance. Oh, and Mark Ruffalo pops up in this movie too with slick back hair. And at number 3, we got Die Hard. Did many people even think of Die Hard? Because Die Hard, you know, it's funny. You just think a Christmas movie, but yeah, it takes place. You know, he lands, he goes right to Nakatomi Plaza at the end of the movie. We wrap it up. I guess it's probably after midnight, so it's Christmas morning. But yeah, it takes place on Christmas Eve. That's it. One night in Nakatomi Plaza. We got Hans Gruber going up against John McClane. And yeah, this is a Christmas classic. I love Die Hard. I think everybody knows how good Die Hard is. It's one of the greatest action movies of all time. And at number 2, I was going back and forth on this one because there's a lot of flashbacks in this movie, but it only does take place, technically, the story takes place in one day, and that is Reservoir Dogs. This is the 1992 Quentin Tarantino film. This is the first film he ever directed, and it's still one of his greatest movies of all time. About a heist gone wrong. We don't even see the heist. We spend most of this movie in a warehouse. We get to uncover the background of the characters through plenty of great flashbacks. Great cast in this movie featuring Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Quentin Tarantino's in this movie. The movie is, I mean, Steve Buscemi gives a great performance in this movie as well, showing people, like, if you don't think Steve Buscemi's a great actor, go watch Reservoir Dogs, then go watch Fargo, and trust me, you'll know that Steve Buscemi's a great actor. But this movie, it's great. The music is great. You also get a great Chris Penn performance in there, wearing some windbreaker. I love this movie. Quentin Tarantino's my favorite director for a reason, and he came out of the gate swinging with Reservoir Dogs. And you would think, how is anything going to beat that? Well, one of my other favorite directors of all time, Spike Lee, made a movie that takes place on one of the hottest days of the year, and that is Do the Right Thing. 1989's Do the Right Thing, one of the greatest films of all time. Not only does it star Spike Lee, you get also Giancarlo Esposito in this movie in a very memorable role, and Danny Aiello as Sal, for Sal's famous pizzeria. I mean, this movie, and again, it looks hot. That's what I was saying about 12 Angry Men. It looks hot in 12 Angry Men, but it's a scorcher in New York and Do the Right Thing. And Do the Right Thing, it's a damn masterpiece. A movie that everybody should see at least one time. It's got a great 4K Blu-ray, and it's got a great Criterion release as well. That was a great question, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. I really do appreciate it. And the next question is from Rico Gomez. He wrote, what do you know about the company Mill Creek? They released I Dream of Jeannie, and now they will be releasing Bewitched complete series on Blu-ray. But posts are all bad-mouthing the company Mill Creek. Well, the only thing I really know about Mill Creek is that the movies they put out, they usually put out comedies. They'll put out double packs and triple packs. The only one I can ever remember, I thought I actually owned some Mill Creek stuff. I don't think I do, though. So I remember seeing the Queens of Scream Blu-ray, which I think featured Scream and one other movie or maybe two other movies on it. That came in a horror pack a few years ago. I didn't get it. Matt, my cousin, got it. You guys know Matt. but he got it, and I remember seeing that. And Mill Creek, from what I'm able to find as well, yeah, people do not like Mill Creek. It sounds like they just put out very, like, cheap Blu-rays, very low quality, so it's like, I think it's because people get them confused with other boutique labels, and, they're technically a boutique label, because they put out a certain type of movie, but it just seems like they're one of the cheaper ones, really just getting the movie out there. Like, they've released movies like Accepted, where some people probably fondly remember Accepted. It's a pretty damn funny movie, but not that many people are running out to get Accepted on Blu-ray, so they're the people releasing, those kinds of movies, like The Breakup. All movies that I went and saw in theaters in the 2000s, all those shitty comedies that no one talks about now, yeah, they release all those movies on Blu-ray, and then I'm the guy looking for them. But again, I don't think I actually have any Mill Creek Blu-rays. And our last question of the week is from Kevin Kruger, and he wrote, what are your favorite movie characters with the following first names? John, well, I kind of want to go with John McClane, but I'm going to have to still go with John Connor. Despite the fact no one has ever given a 10 out of 10 performance as John Connor, or even played John Connor in more than one movie, I mean, the fingerprints of John Connor are all over the Terminator franchise, including the first film, which he doesn't even appear in at all. He's only mentioned by other people because he's not born yet. He hasn't even been made yet. He's made by the end of the movie, but he hasn't been made yet. So John Connor, though, despite all of that, he is so iconic. For anyone who's a fan of the Terminator franchise, he has to be the choice for John. And for Matt, despite how much I talk about Jaws not being one of my favorite Steven Spielberg films of all time, Jaws is still one of the greatest movies ever made. And if we're going to be talking about anyone named Matt, the first name that popped in my head was Matt Hooper, played by the great Richard Dreyfuss. So, of course, when I think of Matt, I think of Matt Hooper. So I guess I do still like Jaws. And when it comes to Kevin, who doesn't think of Kevin McAllister? Yes, Kevin's one of the most common names, but Kevin! I mean, everybody thinks of Kevin, especially if you grew up in the 1990s with Home Alone, directed by Chris Columbus. Everybody knows Macaulay Culkin as Kevin McAllister. They definitely know him more than they actually know Macaulay Culkin. For Tommy, I cheated a little bit on this one, because whenever I think of Tommy, the first thing I think of is the TV show Rescue Me, and I think of Tommy Gavin, played by Dennis Leary. That was one of my favorite shows in the 2000s. That was one that, back when you had to actually, wait for a show to air, and it aired on FX, and you had to watch it live, or you missed it. That's when I was watching Rescue Me, and I love that show. If you haven't seen Rescue Me, it is great. I think it still probably holds up. I haven't watched it in probably 10 years all the way through, but it was one of my favorite shows ever. For Paul, I actually wrote Paul from Pulp Fiction. I wrote because my name is Paul, and this is between you all. I just absolutely love that line. And, Paul's not a very memorable name. I guess you got to kind of go with Paul Atreides at this point. Who doesn't know Paul Atreides now in 2024? 10 years ago, they probably, a lot of people knew Paul Atreides, but now everybody knows Paul Atreides. And when you see Amanda, the first thing I think of is Saw 2 and Amanda from that. Amanda is a very pivotal character in the Saw franchise. Spoiler alert for Saw 10 if you haven't seen it yet. She makes an appearance in that movie with an awful wig, but it was great to have Amanda back. She is one of the more memorable characters in the Saw franchise. I would say she's definitely up there with characters like Jigsaw and Dr. Gordon. Michael, how is it not Michael Corleone? I mean, this is the guy who's the head of the Corleone crime family. So, of course, we have to go with Al Pacino's Michael Corleone, which he should have won an Academy Award for it at least once, but he didn't. So that's really disappointing. But either way, it doesn't matter if he won an award or not. It's still Al Pacino as Michael Corleone, one of the greatest characters in film history, has one of the greatest arcs in film history. And then you got Billy Loomis. This is what I was picking for Billy. Yes, I could have gone with anyone named William, like, William Money or something like that. But we're going to go with anyone who actually was using the name Billy. So I thought Billy Loomis in Scream was a great choice for this. It's Sarah Connor. We were just talking about John Connor. Well, his mom is pretty damn popular as well. I love Sarah Connor, played by the great Linda Hamilton. It was cool to see her pop up again in Dark Fate. But for me, her performance in the first two Terminator films will always be the ones that stand out. I love Sarah Connor, and I love Linda Hamilton. And Tyler, how is it not Tyler Durden? Yeah, I know we're not supposed to be talking about him. We're not supposed to be talking about Fight Club, but Brad Pitt's character and Edward Norton's character in Fight Club is always the Tyler I always think of. And then for Jake, it's got to be Jake Gittes from Chinatown and the Two Jakes. To be fair, I know some people like the Two Jakes. I don't like the Two Jakes, but Chinatown is one of my top 5 favorite films of all time. So, of course, I have to pick Jake Gittes, played by Jack Nicholson. That was a fun question as well, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. And I hope you guys really enjoyed this week's show. I hope I didn't sound too bad. Like I said, I'm a little bit under the weather. I drank a cup of coffee. I took some Dayquil, and I powered through. And I hope it was still entertaining for you guys. So let me know what you guys thought of this show in the comment section below. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, share this video if you could. We also have channel memberships. We have a producers tier where you're going to find Jason Martin and John Doe Juggalo. And we have a directors tier where you're going to find Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews. And our new channel director, Mr. Smelly Potato. Thank you, Mr. Smelly Potato, for joining the directors tier. If you are a channel director, you have your choice review each and every single month. And you have access to plenty of other great perks. If you want to see what all the perks are, you can look for all that in the description below. And guys, it's no pressure at all. If you have no money to throw our way, all we really hope is that you enjoyed this video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.